Welcome to the second episode of Life in White Noise with Dustin Delator and me, Thomas Laurinavicius.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Pretty excited for this episode here.
Right. Do you think it's going to be longer than we expected? Because we just had this conversation, pre-podcast conversation, and we don't really have clear agenda for this, but we have a very clear topic that we want to talk about.
I think what's going to happen is we're just going to start talking, and then we're just going to get into the flow of talking about awareness and self-awareness, really.
Right. Yeah, so the last episode left me really excited about this topic, self-awareness, because generally I was exploring it for the last roughly 3-4 years, starting with meditation. And I can tell you, like, the meditation experience completely changed my life. The one that I did in Thailand and the silence retreat, and self-awareness, or at least an insight that I gained in that retreat into self-awareness and just awareness in general, completely changed my mindset, and I was able to do my best work and generally just live a better life.
Yeah, I mean, it's something incredible, and it's something that's you really can't understand until you actually immerse yourself into it personally, right?
Yep, indeed. When was your first serious insight into self-awareness, where you were like, oh, I'm actually thinking and there's someone seeing me thinking and doing this, and I'm aware of, more things than just me and the world? When was that experience for you first time?
I think that for me, it was like very sporadic for a very long time. It would just like come and go, and I would sort of recognize myself like in a situation, either where it's a heated situation or it's a very extremely excited situation, almost to the full extreme of it, where I'm like, holy crap, this is like either really amazing or holy crap, like I'm legitimately losing my mind. But it wasn't until I actually, about a year ago, when I actually started to legitimately meditate, that I realized how extremely self-aware I could become by being present in the moment. And it's so interesting to like talk about being present, because you assume your whole life you're present because it now is happening and being present is happening. So you think, oh yeah, I am here, I am now, I am present. But it's not until you literally kind of like go internalize your presence, where you're sort of always looking outside your body and you're never looking in, that you start realizing like really how slow you can shrink time into understanding your actual personal self. Because I mean, you listen externally, you see externally, you feel externally, and it's not until like you actually like come into your own body mentally that you start actually finding things that are like so deep seated that they blow your mind.
Absolutely, man. And why do you think it is important to be self-aware, and especially when we are completely, constantly, what's the word? Really just bombarded by all of these notifications and constantly distracted by all of these thoughts, all of these fears, and, all of these triggers from media, from advertisements, from other people. And then at the same time, creating these illusions in our lives, like, oh, I have to be a model now because everyone on Instagram is a model, or I have to travel the world, or I have to do this and I have to do that. And these things create a lot of suffering because suddenly you just want everything at once and you don't really want to invest a minute in in doing anything in acquiring all that skill or the outcome or result or whatever. And I believe spending time and developing your kind of self-awareness muscles allows you to suffer less and understand that you cannot just have everything in a split second. You gotta work for it, and generally you don't actually want everything because you just see the surface level, and you kind of believe like, oh, that would be awesome to have it, but you don't really look into the process and you don't really look into the journey that takes to go there. And I think this is where I suffered the most. And daily meditation practice allows me to just see a bit clearer that I don't really need everything. I don't really want everything. I'm just seduced by these shiny results that people get, or these shiny, not images, maybe images that they portray on social media and, in these shallow conversations and so on. But once you dig deeper, you understand that, people are quite simple. We don't really need much, but we just create all of that suffering in our minds. And I believe that self-awareness is amazingly important skill for especially today's world where we're just constantly connected. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's almost in a sense like consider your life, like every moment and interaction that you have a to-do list, right? And not only is it like things to do, but things to interact with and things to, see. And you realize your to-do list. So for example, if you wake up, you're like, all right, wake up, it's a to-do. Go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, take a shower, turn on the TV, watch the news, have feelings for the news. And you take that to-do list and you really like look at your daily life, right? And it's actually bigger than your business to-do list or your shopping list, your grocery list, but it's every single thing. It's a check mark everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel, everything you actually like emotionally feel. Like that to-do list is humongous, right? And because every interaction, like you said, like the things you see and interact with all these ads, or how you feel about this magazine with these beautiful people, and you're like, oh, now I gotta be beautiful, or now I gotta go to the gym now, or now I gotta do this. You're mentally building this to-do list of everything you need to do in a day, and it's extremely overwhelming. And we don't realize it because it's just like a mental note. We don't write it down. We don't say, oh, I need to, you don't write down every day that you need to brush your teeth. You don't write down every day that you need to, check up on the news or have feelings for what you see on the news. You just make that mental note. And it's like looking at a giant to-do list that you can impossibly never complete is extremely overwhelming. And it's what brings people stress. It's what brings people to the brink of insanity, of just like, I can't complete life. Like I can't do it. And then it's that moment that you say, like, you meditate and you bring yourself back into your own self, where you're only taking care of you and not the interactions outside of you. And it almost like slows down time at a point where you realize that, that to-do list means nothing right now. Like I mean everything. And then your to-do list now is like, breathe in, breathe out, recognize that I exist. Your to-do list shrinks down to 3 things, and it's very simple to check those things off. And so it calms you down. And, you know, after a long meditation, you realize that like you open your eyes and you're like, I can conquer any to-do list now because I've conquered my first task of the day, which is why I believe that meditating in the morning is very powerful.
Yeah, I believe that, yeah, like meditating at any point in your life or any point in your day is very powerful, but obviously morning is empowering because you set the tone for the day. And I like that you mentioned the humongous, you know, like invisible kind of impossible to finish, to complete to-do list that we just keep expanding every single moment. And there's this psychological bias, I believe, or effect that is called Zeigarnik effect, which says that if you don't finish something, your mind constantly keeps running that through your mind and tries to finish the thing. So that's why when you hear a song that you hate and you switch to another one, you didn't complete the song, so it keeps running in your head,
yeah,
until it tries to, you know, kind of close the loop. So actually, when you hear a song you hate, you need to finish it, and then your brain checks it as done, and then you're done with it. Your mind is like, okay, this task is complete. But once you have these tasks that you're kind of, you know, started, and you're maybe, you know, you thought about the beginning, and then your mind is registering, okay, this is incomplete task. I need to come up with a to-do list to complete this task. So one of the things that worked for me really well is just to take a pen, or, well, pen is actually for me better. I like physically write things on my notebook. I would just write down things that are on my mind right now, just kind of, you know, like free up the space, free up the RAM from my mind. Mm-hmm. And I'll just put it into later list. And that later list basically means I'm probably never going to do it. I'm just trying to trick my mind. But at the same time, I give that mind, that restless mind, a little hope. Maybe sometime later in this life, in this universe, I'll find time to do this thing. So I'll just dump all these ideas on paper, kind of trying to take advantage of that Zeigarnik effect, and say in my mind that, okay, now this task is complete. It's on paper. It's recorded. You don't have to worry about it. And there's this quote, I think, by Tim Ferriss, where he said that the weakest pencil is stronger than the strongest mind, or something like that. So for me, it makes a lot of sense because, yeah, like everything that is written down, it's permanent. Like it's recorded, and you don't have to trust your mind to interpret, to try to remember, to try to sabotage you and constantly ping you like, oh, there's this thing I forgot, and I don't remember what it is. And then your mind is trying to use all the resources, all the energy to just, you know, think about that thing that you forgot. So I think meditation, what it allows to do is to detach yourself from all of these tasks that you need to complete, or that you, in quotes, need to complete, you know? So you see this urge, or this desire, or this to-do list item coming to you, and you say, okay, I acknowledge you, you are here, but then you let it go. So I think meditation allows you to just say, okay, there are a lot of things in life, but I don't have to attach myself to every single thing and go with it, you know? Like I allow these guests to come to my life. I meet them. I say, okay, you are a to-do list item. You are an emotion. You are a memory. You are a thought. And I let them go on their own journey. And I just keep breathing and keep being here. And at least for me, it was a powerful revelation. And I learned this insight from the Headspace app. And I believe that anyone who's listening should try Headspace, or at least watch their videos, because they're really well done, and they explain meditation in, I believe, in the best visual way possible. And they simplify things, and then you understand, oh, actually meditation is not some woo-woo thing that I need to, you know, make weird sounds and have a very nice room with special candles and stuff. You can just sit anywhere right now, and even listening to the podcast, you can focus on your breath while acknowledging that you're hearing our voices. So I think getting started with meditation is simpler than people imagine. And I don't know what was your point, not point, but like what was your kind of expectation before meditation and after? But for me, it was, oh, this is simpler than I imagined. This is really simple. My body just needs oxygen and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, with my first initial expectations of meditation, I was actually at a much younger age. I grew up, my father meditated, and I didn't really understand it at the time. I just always pictured, monks, Indian style, just sitting there being peaceful, and just being quiet. Like I didn't understand the outcome that meditation provides. So I kind of bypassed it for a very long time. I think a couple of years ago, I started like once or twice just to see what it was all about. But it wasn't until recently that I meditated through being trained to how to meditate, right? So I just thought, close your eyes, be quiet, and that's it, right? And then it wasn't until I was taught how to meditate and how to get better at it that I started to really understand that there actually is something that you can get out of it instead of being like, sit down, shut up. You just need to just not talk right now. So it wasn't until I started like learning actually how to do it that I started finding physical and mental benefits that came from it. So it was almost
What were these
a learning
things?
experience. Like the outcomes?
What were the things that you learned? Like, was that a guided meditation by a person you met physically, or you used an app? What was it?
It was an app. So I did use Headspace to be taught how to really do it, and how to like eliminate your thoughts, or at least like recognize that they exist and just kind of like shoo them away in a sense. And yeah, it wasn't until that actual mental training of really concentrating on your physical self and just your breathing and just the simplicity of it. And first of all, like the first 1, 10, 100 times you see all of these like these voices in your head that are speaking. It's you speaking to yourself, but you don't realize how crazy your mind is until you actually like sit there and watch it unravel, where you're like, all right, have no thoughts. You're like, yeah, that's simple. Just don't think. I enjoy that a lot. It's a major pastime of mine. And then you realize that you're like, oh, I have all of these uncontrollable thoughts that are just like zooming by every second, being like, oh, do you remember that? Hey, do you remember that one thing you did back in high school that was super embarrassing? You're like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't want to think about that. Why is that coming through my mind right now? I'm trying to not think. And then to have someone say like, yeah, just like recognize it, kind of shoo it along and just like get back to your center and just think about breathing. It was super hard at the beginning, but once I got through that process, it was an explosion of euphoria, especially after I did like a gong bath, which was just almost an hour-long meditation inside this pyramid where they're just playing gongs and singing and all of these things. And it's so long, and it took me almost 30 minutes of the whole event to actually hit that peak euphoric moment, which was mind-blowingly, like it took too much out of me, to the point where like when I got up and I stood up after the whole thing, I loved every little thing that was happening in my life. I loved that I was walking. I loved that there were people around me. I loved that the sky was so bright of stars, and I loved the food I saw. And I just really enjoyed the small little details of life that my monkey brain, as Tim Ferriss may say, robbed me of for so long.
Wow, man. I can relate to absolutely everything you just said, and especially the part where you're like, yeah, I'm supposed to do nothing right now, just breathe. And then I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about nothing right now. This is interesting. And then, like the most crazy thought or desire or an itch comes and like, yeah, it starts bothering you. And then you're like, oh, I'm thinking nothing again. And then you realize, well, I'm not even aware. I'm thinking about 10 different things at this moment, but I'm just not capable of recognizing them because my self-awareness was sleeping all that time. And as you say, once you figured it out that, oh, you cannot really silence your mind, it's just buzzing all the time, but you have a choice to either acknowledge the fact that your mind is a mess and all of these emotions and thoughts, they come and go, or you can just choose one or the other emotion and just follow it until you start suffering, because you're like, why am I following this thing? Why am I caring about this thing so much? And this basic kind of exercise, just focusing on your breath and recognizing what things come and go, allows you to just build that mental space that you can that you can use to, as you say, just to see the world in a completely different light. You start appreciating, well, this food is amazing, and I'm surrounded by this beautiful nature. And I was just constantly sleepwalking because even though I had my eyes open, I was but caring and spending all that attention to the thoughts and memories and emotions in my head. And until then, like, I wouldn't say you're completely awake, but you're starting to see what awakening means. And you're starting to see that, well, I don't have to sleepwalk all the time. And I think we start to sound really woo-woo, but I'd like for you to maybe define what meditation is, what self-awareness is, and what is awakening, or one of these terms at least. Because for people who never heard about these things, it might be scary. I think that's why I didn't start meditating earlier, because all of these terms sounded really foreign for me, and I was scared that, yeah, I was just scared of the unknown. I didn't know what is this all about. And can you explain it in very simple man's language? What is this all about?
Oh man, I honestly think
encourage me, sir. Encourage me, please. Encourage me.
I think it's really, really hard to explain. It's almost a sense of explaining, what is love? Define love or define art. Actually, define. And I was actually in college, I actually had to define art. And if you ever ask someone to write down the definition of art, it's really hard. But not to say it's not hard to create art. It's just really hard to define. And I mean, you can define meditation and self-awareness by, opening up a dictionary and reading it and, or putting it into a sentence of sorts. But when it comes to, meditation and self-awareness and what was the third thing you were talking about?
The awakening.
The awakening. Yeah. They go hand in hand, right? So it's almost a sense that like you start one and then you eventually learn about the next one. And it's almost a emotion for you. So meditation in the common sense of the word being like, I honestly, it's hard to explain, it's just sitting there quietly not thinking and just only internalizing the understanding that you need to inhale and exhale, if you make it that simple and you practice it over time, where it's like you almost visually see a thought happen and you're just like, okay, move along. And to practice that, it's a trade almost, where you practice it and you're going to be terrible the first time you try, but the more you do it, the more you get out of it, and then it trails into this, I guess, like a staircase or like a mountain climb, where you get up to the first ledge and you worked hard to get to that first ledge, but once you got to that first ledge, you turn around and you look and you see, wow, look out there, look at what I'm seeing. I see the tops of trees. I see a town in the distance, and you're like, wow, that's really incredible. I really enjoy that. And then you start to have that self-awareness, the awareness of your accomplishments. So meditation being the training and the practice and the hard work to get you to that first ledge, for you to turn around and look and see, this is beautiful. Wow, I'm so happy I tried and worked for this. This is everything that I was striving for. But to realize that there's more mountain above you. And so you keep training, you keep going up. But then you peak, right? Once you hit that peak, that's that awakening, right? That's that point of euphoric feeling and emotion that people try so hard to describe visually to people, because people who have never experienced that have no idea what that is. And for me, when I had that like true awakening, or in the gong bath in the pyramid, the first thing I do is I tell people, listen, I'm going to try to give you a visual representation of what I'm feeling. So just take this with a grain of salt. And one of the things I said was, it was this crazy blue light that almost started from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes. And there were two small lights, like the size of my fists. And they all at once just shot, like a split second, right to my core, right to my stomach. And it grew into this giant ball, probably like the diameter of my waist. And it just shot out from me. And I just felt like my whole entire body was just cleansed of this negativity. And is that exactly what happened? Did I see that? No, I didn't see that. But that's what it felt like. And it was just unbelievable. And it's that point where you hit the peak, the summit of the mountaintop. And you're like, wow, like that first ledge was beautiful, but this is just breathtaking. Like I can't explain the beauty that I have been able to, see. And, people who summit mountains can't explain the feeling they have when they're at the top of the mountain, just like someone who practices the meditation and has the self-awareness and then eventually gets to this awakening, that they get this point where they're like, I've reached something that I can't explain to others, but it is so endearing, so delightful, so amazing that that's all you want to do now. You almost get addicted to it.
Wow, man, that was very visual, and I got a bit excited to just hear what's going to happen next. And I think the correlation with mountain climbing and summiting the top has a very, very close relationship with meditation and self-awareness and this awakening, because yeah, it's hard to explain. Like there's nothing at the top. People, like, no one has gold or anything at the top of the freaking mountain. Like, why do you do that? And then you go there yourself, and then you suffer. Like you struggle and you push yourself. And most of the time, if you do more serious mountain climbing, it's life threatening. It's serious stuff. Like it pushes your mental and physical capabilities to the very top, and then you reach the top and there's nothing, but you feel so euphoric and you feel like, wow, the world is amazing. I want to do it again, and I want people know that they need to do this again, or they need to at least do it for the first time, or at least they need to do this. And there's not much at the top, but the whole journey, the whole kind of process allows you to fill your body with all of these different sensations. And as you say, like once you reach that point and once you know what it is and how it feels, you just don't want to live your life like you used to before, because you finally realize there's so much more. And I was just sleeping and kind of ignoring all the stuff that life has to offer. And right now we were talking a lot about just all of this spiritual thing, and about a lot of breath work and just recognizing the world as it is. But it makes your life better in absolutely every aspect, whether it's relationships, whether it's your emotional or physical health. And the most important thing that we talk about in this podcast is doing the independent work, doing your life work. And I think this awareness, this awakening, and this daily practice of meditation allows you to do your best work and to really understand what is best work for you. Because again, art is really hard to define. Love is hard to define. It's different things for different people. Self-awareness, meditation can be just jumping on a bike and riding a bike for 6 hours, or go and run a marathon or whatever. Just to focus on the thing that you're doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this meditation where you're just sitting in one place and doing sounds and stuff. But you choose your thing, you choose your meditation. But the goal that you're seeking is the same. Self-awareness is just this goal and this ability to see things clearly and finally open your eyes to see what you want to do in your life. And how does this apply to independent work? I think, first of all, you start to realize that you don't have to do things that other people do. And in your case, you said that you were stuck in Orlando at that time, or in Florida, in other places. Was it Tampa before Orlando?
Yeah, it was Tampa, then Orlando.
Yeah. So you said like, yeah, I'm here and I'm kind of supposedly, following the rules of life. I'm following this route that so many people were following before. But then you suddenly realized, well, maybe my kind of art, my kind of independent work, my kind of career is not really defined by anyone. It's really an open definition, and it's only up to me to decide what it's going to be. And I don't know how awareness and meditation helped you in your work, but for me, it gave me a lot of clarity, and it allowed me to see I'm still in progress of that. So I cannot completely say that I'm awake and I'm completely fully aware of everything and so on. But it gives me these little insights where I'm like, oh, I'm actually doing this for the likes, not for the love of the art. And this year, I really want to focus more on the process that makes me feel more fulfilled, rather than just focusing on the outcomes and expectations of like, oh, I wonder how many listeners will listen to this podcast, or I wonder how many likes I'll get with this photo, or I wonder how many people will read this article that I'm going to post. This meditation and self-awareness allows me to just step back and see the big picture and see, well, I actually enjoy the journey. I enjoy climbing the mountain. And even if no one knows that I climbed the mountain, I enjoy the journey and being at the top of it. And I'll go down and I'll do it again. So I don't know about you, but that's what I feel with self-awareness and meditation. In when it comes to independent work and just doing, like your work life?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very similar to yours in the sense that, I mean, once I reached the independent work life, right, I realized that I needed to be more self-aware. In a corporate job, you're sitting there, you're in your office, you're in your desk chair, you're told what to do. If not told what to do, you collaborate with others on a process that you as a group may do together, but still you have a plan laid out that wasn't yours to own. And once you are independent and everything that you do is yours. You own everything. You own every decision. You own when you wake up, when you go to work, when you do finances, or when you do development, or when you do program management or anything. You decide everything. And that to-do list alone is overwhelming. And then to add that onto your life to-do list, and then add that on to other things, like it is comfortable being behind a desk because there's a point where you don't have to think, you just do. But when you become independent and you start working independently and working on everything, that every little detail that you touch is your fault, your responsibility, you almost have to be more self-aware so that when you recognize yourself, almost like, at least for me, when I started the work, I could find myself wanting so bad the desire to get back into that comfortable corporate life where I could just be like, sit at my desk, knock off the tasks that were told me, and just keep going. And knowing and realizing that I don't have that luxury anymore. That is one luxury that I forfeited to have a more enjoyable life, because, at least for me, in my perspective, because even though there are a lot of things out there that I don't enjoy doing, I have to do them. And being more self-aware, that realizing that these are some of the tasks that I have to do, and realize that to have that beginning day, like I said, with the meditation, or for some people, it's just, exercising in the morning or doing something along the lines that keeps you from just losing your mind during the day. Because you realize that, like, in independent work, everything you do, everything a business is, you do. You can get help from others. You can, communicate with others. But this is you. This is the life you've chosen. And so you have to take control over everything. And I feel that just because of the overwhelmingness that comes with, that you almost have to be more self-aware of every little thing that you do, and bring yourself back and say, like, listen, like, there's a lot, holy crap, there is so much that I need to do, and to calm yourself down, because then you can start knocking off tasks. Because when you, like I said in the beginning, when you look at this giant task list, you can't do it. But once you shrink the task list down to little itty bitty things, then you realize everything's possible. Anything's possible. And so that's why, for me, growing into this process, this independent life or independent work, I recognize that these are some core things that I need to focus on to, one, maintain my sanity, two, maintain my work-life balance. Because when I started, it was all work. It was 9 to 9 work. And I realized that I can't do that. Like, I can't let this control me. And it was really early on. It's actually pretty intense that how early on this realization was. Usually first it's, holy crap, get a client. But luckily for me, I spent the entire year networking globally to get that client list or whatever. To have those overwhelming things, but still to have that idea that You really need to bring yourself back into yourself, because you yourself are not a company, although you on paper are, and everything you do are. You need to focus on like really taking care of you and internalize it before you set out onto your journey. You know, it's almost like you bring back to the mountain and you're like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna climb Everest right now. But you haven't even run a mile. You've never run a mile in your life. You're like, I'm gonna climb Everest. Hell yeah. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. Like, you know?
You can do it. You can do it. I mean, you can try, and then you'll just space like, maybe I'll just turn around and go back and eat pizza and chips and watch movies.
Yeah, this was a terrible idea.
But I really like how you mentioned that I don't like this, but I need to do this. I'm a business. I own my life, and I think life is all about managing pain and managing these expectations. You know, like, and most of the pain, if not all, that you create in your life is you. It's not other people. You know, like obviously, if someone shot you, well, in a way, someone like is responsible for it, but I'm pretty sure you said something to that guy that upset him and he took a gun and he shot you, or that girlfriend or that boyfriend that hurt you. I'm pretty sure you did something you were not fully aware of what you were doing that ended up in pain. And keep going.
Yeah, or the decisions you made to lead up to getting shot, like those decisions, put you in that situation, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, everything is a result of something, like you always, obviously, like everything starts with your mind. Like as you mentioned in the last episode, you had this idea of, yeah, I can do independent work. I can be on my own. I can travel the world. And basically it just happened in your mind. You just had to put things into action and actually achieve it, like kind of like materialize it. So do all the kind of magic stuff and, like put thought into an actual thing. And it happened. But you had to take a lot of these decisions. And most of these decisions were unconscious. Most of these decisions were you were not aware of. And most of these decisions were leading to certain results. So wherever you are right now is a sum of your decisions that you made in the past. And whether you chose them, whether you were aware of these decisions or not, these decisions lead to this moment. And I think it really upsets me to kind of certain degree when people that I love and care about, they tell me like, oh, this is not my fault. I ended up broke, or I ended up sick, or why do I deserve this, or why am I in this really bad place? And the only thing I can say, obviously, I try to empathize, but empathize, probably the empathize word,
empathize.
Where you try to feel for them, but at the same time, whatever you're feeling right now, it's what you need to feel, because your body and your soul is telling you this is not right. Everything you did before leads to this very ultimate suffering, painful moment, and it's there for a reason. It's there to tell you that you were doing things wrong. And I think once you realize that pain is not actually bad, it's just a signal telling you, well, things you were doing before is just not working. And at least for me, the three biggest lessons or three biggest teachers in life were pain. It's empty pockets, it's broken heart, and empty stomach. Because in these moments, you realize, can I just not do this again? Can I just not ever again end up in this place? And then you start reflecting on your journey, and then you see that decisions that you made that were, just for the quick wins, just to seek that quick pleasure for, I'm just going to buy that new iPhone and that new laptop, and I don't care that I don't have money. I'm just going to do, stuff with my girlfriend. I'm going to upset her, and I'm going to go out and not call her ever. And I'm just going to act like an idiot and not think about others. And maybe I'll just, eat all the stuff that I can, and then become overweight. And then one day I would just wake up and realize, well, I'm really fat. I need to start doing something because I don't love myself anymore. And then it's just all the bad things in one place, and it's really hard to get out of there. Luckily, people get to the point where they start seeing their life differently, and they come into the position where they're like, oh, I'm actually the CEO of this company called my life. I can do things, I can change things, I can fire people or fire staff members, whatever that is, anger, desires, anything, and you can shape it. And I think where you mentioned that, yeah, independent work is hard. You have to do all of these things, and most of these things you're not gonna love. You're not gonna enjoy them, and it's gonna be painful. But it's the price you need to pay for the freedom that you want to have. And again, if you define freedom the way that actually resonates with you, you don't really need much. You don't really need to take every client. You don't really need to make more money. You can choose to make enough and then focus on the things that really matter for you. And I think this is where all of this self-awareness, awakening, meditation, and spirituality, and all the kind of stuff comes to is, people don't just do it just to do it. They do it to live better lives. They do it to have better careers. And I think this is where you start applying it, and this is where you start seeing results, and you start recognizing that, okay, I don't really have to be on every social media network. I can just use one because I'm self-aware that this is empowering my message. This is empowering my target audience. This is empowering people that I want to serve. And this is empowering my business and my lifestyle. And I'm going to choose one channel. And I'm going to use that. I'm still working on it, so I cannot advise everyone on how to do that. But I believe that self-awareness allows you to at least ask these questions and make yourself uncomfortable and say, yeah, maybe I don't need everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I really resonated with the fact that like people do these things to live better lives, to make better decisions, right? I too am also trying to narrow down my channels, even though I just added another channel to my voice with YouTube and the podcast. But, sacrificing some channels like Snapchat or even potentially Instagram or Twitter, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to sacrifice Twitter, unfortunately. But that's for a completely different conversation. But still, to make those decisions to say, this is where either I want my voice to be heard, or this is where I want my decisions to be made. I mean, life is literally, like you said, it's a entire bag of choices. Everything you do, you have a choice. I choose to be poor, or I choose to be rich. I choose to be in this location. Like, I remember there were a couple of times for me, right in the beginning of my career, where I was in a position that I literally felt trapped. I physically, mentally, everything in me cried that I was trapped. And I wanted somebody else, someone outside of me, to help me make a decision to be untrapped. Whether it's, I'm gonna quit this job. And then someone will be like, well, don't quit the job until you get another job. I'm like, fuck, I can't get a job until I get rid of this. And then you're making bad decisions on bad decisions prior, right? And once you relieve yourself from all of these external voices and you look internally, you're like, you know what? And this goes even back to the last podcast we were speaking about. Crap, my mind totally went blank right there. That was weird.
Let me explain you what we were talking about. We're talking about independent work and a lot of white noise in life. And I think self-awareness is the tool that allows you to cut through all of that noise and focus on the things that we want to, which is choosing independent work and choosing independent life. And I don't know which part you wanted to refer to in your argument, but let me just interrupt you a little because I might forget it as well. But you said you need to, like you have this story, in your head telling you you need to do this and you cannot quit the job. You're not going to get a new job and so on. And I really don't like victimization in whether it's professional or personal life. Like when clients tell you like, oh, you didn't do this and that, and like they kind of take a victim position. And generally I would refer everything, all of this, kind of like storytelling you do to yourself and all of this victimization is just your ego, and it constantly stays, kind of like steps in the way of your true self who wants to do stuff that you want to do. And then, that ego that tells, well, you need to do this and you need to be more victim. You need to get approval of others. You need to reach this goal because other people do that. And you mentioned, like this victimization. And I believe that in many cases, ego steps in the way of where you want to go, and self-awareness allows you to combat that ego, because then you're like, oh, you're telling me to do this. What if I just did opposite and, written a book and never shared with anyone? I'll just have it for myself because I just love process. And this is what I'm going to do right now. So I don't know how you release yourself from victimization, but for me, I was victim many times in many situations in my life where I was like, why was I born in average Lithuanian family? Why am I not a son of the king or of the north or whatever, So this victimization is one of the biggest diseases in the world right now. And every campaign, and I don't want to start accusing people of just being victims all the time, but all these campaigns and all these news and everything you see online is just victimization. It's just manifestation of, oh, we are all victims and we cannot do anything. You always have a choice. God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, the victimization, definitely, and internalizing that, it brings you down a funnel of just badness, whether it's victimizing yourself or being victimized, but getting through that and and I think that's what I wanted to reference from the last one, was allowing these external voices control your decisions. And when you bring in the self-awareness, you realize that everything I do is my choice. I accept all external voices and internal voices, but in the end, ultimately, it's my decision and I will make the choice. I actually was a while in November last year, December, I was part of this human element workshop that I worked on with a lot of other people down in Orlando for, I think, 4 days. It was an incredible workshop. And if anybody can find it and do it, it's unbelievable. It focuses on actual like corporate teams and everybody working together a lot, but it has a lot of self-awareness deeply ingrained in it. And once you are self-aware, and then you can almost broadcast that out to the rest of your employees, and then they can do the same to you. You guys, the communication becomes incredible, and it doesn't waste time. And it's incredible. Like, that's the power of self-awareness. Like, you can be a better you, but you can also be a better team if the entire team is self-aware. And it's something incredible. Definitely look for it. The Human Element Workshop. I can't recommend it enough. I did it once. I want to do it again almost, because there are some practices in that that I need to train myself in. Because once you're self-aware, especially after the workshop, you start realizing, oh my gosh, I had no idea these little details of my life, because it really forces you to dig down deep into everything that you do as a human being, and to really acknowledge it and understand it. And not only acknowledge and understand, but to understand that it's not about a good or bad. It's not saying like what you're doing is good or what you're doing is bad, but now you know what you're doing. Do you perceive it as good or do you perceive it as bad? Do you want to change it? Because now that you know it exists, you are more empowered to make that change. And it's an incredible experience. And that's why, like you said, self-awareness is a tool to living, a better life. And it's what people strive for. And once you understand who you are on the little details of your life and your emotions and how you react to the external things that are coming at you, and realizing that, it makes you stronger. It makes you more powerful and more able to set out and really conquer what you want to achieve, because you know that every single decision you make is yours. And then when you achieve what you seek out, it is that much greater because you know that you were the one that got you there.
Oh yeah, that's the ultimate power in life, and I cannot really explain how happy I was when I finally realized that everything I want to achieve, to have in this life, it's in my hands. It's obviously not easy. It's very simple, but it's obviously not easy. But at least having, knowing that, well, everything I want to do is in my hands, and now I can face these uncomfortable situations. I can do this uncomfortable work. I can do this boring work, because I know that it needs to be done. It needs to be done right now for me to achieve the goal that I'm striving for. And you mentioned the workshops and human element workshops, to be precise. And just generally, I think what self-awareness helps you to do is to address the fear and face the fear, because generally working in teams, why teams struggle or even fail most of the time is because they have fears in operating with each other. Obviously, there's this human nature where you just don't want to upset everyone all the time and tell them like, oh, your work sucks, or I don't like that color, or you're constantly doing work too slow, or you're too fast for our team, or you are too negative. And self-awareness allows you to express that feeling, that emotion, that kind of feedback that you have for a person, for a team, in a non-destructive way, because it comes from within, and you reason everything that, well, guys, I'm expressing this feedback right now not because you suck or you're a bad employee or you're a bad designer or whatever, but just because I want to be in a good team. I want this team to succeed. I want this company to be successful. And for us to be successful, we need to address things as soon as possible. Otherwise, bad things start building up. And then, at some point, things will explode and everything will just crash. And then no one is happy. Everyone is victimized. Everyone takes it personally. But if you have guts to express that concern, that feedback, that thought, that emotion, whatever comes your way, and it applies to everything, to your personal relationships, your family, your work, business, anything. You just address the thing that is in front of you, and you do your best to kind of manage it, to solve it, to find a solution. And self-awareness, at least for me, allows to face fear and say, well, I'm not going to die if I just say that person that all these 15 emails that he postponed responding and ended up costing me a lot of time, or losing a client, or having me to pay fees and late late work delivery or whatever is annoying. And like as soon as you realize that, okay, there is something you don't like, or there's something that is annoying you, you need to be self-aware that there is fear that is stopping you expressing that feedback that might do disservice for that person, because that person might not be aware that he's too slow or too fast, too negative, too arrogant, too self-centered, whatever. And I think you're doing a service by first facing your fear and allowing yourself to express what you're thinking. And obviously, you need to find a non-destructive way and never victimize a person or never try to make a person guilty for the thing he did, because it's just a certain decision he did. It's the wrong decision. It's not the person. And then at the same time, you help the other person, because this person might be like, oh, I was not even aware I was a douchebag. Where in my case, I've been a douchebag in many, many cases in many relationships. And then they would tell me like, oh, I really don't like when you do that. And you constantly disrespect me by being late. And I'm like, oh, this is really good point. That improves my life. Thank you so much for expressing this feedback. And I don't know how meditation and self-awareness helps you with fear management, but I think generally it should be and again, as you mentioned, it is a tool, and it's supposed to be a tool. It's not like your life's work to be, meditating under a tree. It's a tool you use to make better life decisions, manage fear, manage emotions, and improve your relationships in whether life or business.
Absolutely. And there are many other tools, out there, in order to, live a more fulfilled life, or anything along that matter. Right. Yeah. I don't know how much of my meditation or self-awareness really manages my fears. It certainly manages my daily habits, or manages, potentially my communication with other people. Because I know, some things about myself on how I approach people, or approach difficult situations, or not approach difficult situations. And that definitely helps me in those matters. But when it comes to fear management, I mean, man, there are so many other ways. I mean, for me, I always associated with, mountain climbing, but that's just my thing that I enjoy doing. That kind of, I immerse myself in my fears, and maybe that's something that we could talk about. And the next episode is, what's another tool out there that could help you along breaking down your fears, or controlling your fears, or even overcoming your fears. I think fear management is a very big thing that we also have to acknowledge as another thing that we need to take control of, in a sense.
We just addressed the elephant in the room. It's there.
There it is.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I agree. It's a huge topic, and it's a timeless topic. So people who lived thousands and thousands of years ago, they had these fears. Most of them were survivable fears, and we still have them. So that's why we have so many issues where we don't really understand what is going on in our heads. But obviously, there are many tools, and every person, in their lives, they faced their smaller to bigger fears, and they failed to manage them, and maybe they actually gave up to their fears, and fears can be very limiting. A fear-based life can be very limiting, and it can create a lot of suffering and dysfunctions, and it can traumatize people. And I've seen it before. I've been also affected by fear in many aspects of my life. But as you say, there are tools, there are ways to combat that four-letter scary words. And I would love to discuss more about fear and fear management, and just facing fear in the next episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for chatting today, Thomas. Had a lot of fun, like I did last time.
Oh yeah, this was. I really felt that this was probably the most serious podcast I ever did, because at the same time, full disclosure, people, everyone who's listening, I'm not certified in absolutely anything. So anything I said in this podcast is not an advice, is not a medical solution to your problems, and it's not a pill that is going to make your life easier or better or happier or richer or whatever. So please don't sue me. But at the same time, it was really interesting to kind of see how I understand this whole thing, because I've been obsessed by it for the last 3-4 years by just uh, kind of kind of studying these high achievers and all the people that I look up to, and really understanding how they get their stuff done, and really understanding why they started meditating, and then seeing myself doing this practice, and then reflecting and trying to explain to everyone, and share insights with you, and then also learn new insights from your story and your experiences. It was really interesting episode, and thank you for sharing your personal stories, because it is personal. You didn't have to do that, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. It truly is personal, and this was a pretty serious podcast. And if you do know the both of us, we can dabble on the non-serious side just as much, and I hope that we can do that in podcasts to come. But I think you could really sense the passion that we have behind this topic in general. And I even saw it in the last episode, right when we were talking about moving on to self-awareness. We were both like kind of jumping out of our seats, like, oh, that's one I really love to talk about. So
yeah, and
this was a very passion-driven talk.
Yeah, it's not one of the things that it's completely sexy thing to talk about, but
No.
Like we even did the meditation session in casino in the cruise in the Nomad on the Nomad cruise in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and that says something. That says something about dedication, and says something about our interest in that field. And I'm more than happy to discuss with everyone who disagrees or agrees or has any new insights on this topic. Just reach out at us. You can find Dustin and me on major social media networks, and I prefer my email and my email list, but I try to respond to absolutely everyone. So feel free to express your thoughts and your disagreements or agreements or whatever you feel like to our inboxes. And yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I suppose that we'll put all of those major social media and emails in our description. We have a description, right? I don't really know how this goes.
Right, it's still work in progress, but just click the button below, subscribe, make sure to share with your friends, donate and stuff.
Yes, there we go.
You're gonna find all of that classic stuff that you hear in other podcasts, and thank you so much for listening.
Thanks a lot.